living on an island would be pretty cool, right? Especially an island somewhere in New York. This is really kind of cool. So, well, we'll talk about that later though, Janet. Okay.
Okay.
So, hi everyone. Welcome back again. I'm Jim Gaston. You're joining us on No Law from Left Behind. Today we are joined with our good friend and incredibly important publicist, if you will. I'm going to call you publicist of sorts, right? For our friends in law firms, Janet Falk. Janet, thanks for coming to the show.
My pleasure. I'm excited to be here with Jim.
Thanks a lot. And we're also joined by my co-host, Dave Myers. Dave, how you doing this week?
Doing great. Thanks.
Yeah, well, man, I'll tell you what, we're getting you back more and more, and I'm glad you're back in the fold, buddy.
I'm happy to be back.
So Janet joins us today to talk about PR for law firms and lawyers, right? And one of the things I'm going to quote this right now, Janet. I'm going to probably steal your thunder a little tiny bit. I love what you said. Janet said before the show, she said, business doesn't go away. It just goes to someone else, right? And so Janet, I'd love you to introduce yourself, tell everybody about what you do and why that line is so important, if you don't mind.
Sure, Jim. I'm happy to do that. So I'm a public relations and marketing communications professional, and I work with attorneys who have a solo practice or a small firm. What I do is I help them to get in the news so they can keep in touch with their lapsed clients, their current clients, their referral sources, and attract new business. And there are many other reasons why attorneys want to be in the news. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. Now, the reason I said business doesn't go away, it goes to someone else, is because that applies to reporters as well. Reporters are always looking for story ideas and for sources. So if they're not going to call you because they don't know who you are, they are going to call someone else. And then you will be asking the question that every attorney asks: why her and not me? I know everything about that subject. That reporter should have called me, and I'm much better looking besides.
There you go. Hey, kind of a sidebar, and we didn't talk about this at all. HARO, Help a Reporter Out. Are you familiar with it?
Of course I am. Are you familiar with the fact that it is a two-tier service? They have a free service and they have a paid service. If you pay for HARO, then you are getting it 1 hour before the people who get it for free. So if you are getting it for free, not only are you 1 hour behind, you are 1 hour behind the professionals who have already submitted a scintillating source for comment.
Give everybody a little background on HARO so everybody knows what it is.
Right. So HARO is a service. It's for free, or you can subscribe, and it comes out 3 times a day. And in it, it gathers reporters' queries for sources. Now, reporters are always looking for ideas and for sources who can comment on a given topic. Now, I check it periodically, but most of the time I find that it's asking for people who are experts on lawnmowers or dice and not necessarily on business and legal topics. So as an attorney, you have to decide how much of your time you want to spend scrolling through 70 random requests that have nothing to do with your practice. And as I mentioned, you're an hour behind the professionals who have paid to get that service in advance.
Yeah. So when we started doing podcasts and things of that nature, I knew HARO, I call it HARO, and Help a Reporter Out. And I must have been interviewed and wrote 5-10 different things that are business related and technology related and security related. So it was great for us, right? But there's always, I've got it filtered down to topics that I'm interested in, but it's always been pretty valuable. Dave, are you using it? Are you looking at it at all right now?
I've used it for years.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I kind of drift in and out of, I've been so busy on the speaking circuit that I almost.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, real quick, Janet, the reason you're here is kind of a good story for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
from why not me? Let's get me doing that kind of idea. So tell people how you ended up on the show. I think that's really important.
Certainly. No, I did a search on online to identify legal marketing podcasts. And yours was one that came up. And so
First, of course, right? First.
Among several, yes. And then I sent a note to the host of the podcast, and I say, I noticed that you haven't talked about the subject of media relations for attorneys. And this is something that I talk about often. I've written about for the New York Law Journal, for the New Jersey Law Journal, for Marketing the Law Firm, and I speak on CLEs on this topic. I'd be interested in being a guest on your podcast. And some of them wrote back right away. And some of them, like Jim, unfortunately, didn't respond immediately. So I followed up a month later to make sure that he had seen my note. And we had a great conversation after that. And one thing led to another. And here I am. I want to point out that on my website, which is janetlslaw.com, janetlfalk.com, that I have a library of resources. And one of them is called Resources to be on a podcast and promote your appearance. So if you want, you can do a search online as I did for a specific topic. But here's a second idea, which people do not pursue, was the subject of a recent newsletter. It's what I call reverse engineering. So if you know someone who is like yourself, has a similar practice or has a similar point of view, you can look on this website, Owltail, OWLTAIL, owltail.com, and you can find out which podcasts they have been on. And then you can contact the host of that podcast and say, I see that you were talking to my colleague, Dave Myers, and I have a different point of view, and I'd like to be a guest on your podcast. So you can do a search for the topic, but you can also reverse engineer the process and find people like yourself who have appeared on podcasts and then go after those podcast hosts. So I did that as well. And that's how I got on even more podcasts.
That's some very creative thinking. I must admit, though, as a podcast host, right, as somebody who's lining up guests all the time, I'm always proactively inviting guests, right? And it's a rare occasion that I get a legitimate request to be on the show. I mean, I get requests all the time. Hey, this person would be great for your show. They have nothing to do, and they're not related at all. Right. It's almost spammy in a way, right? And so when you do it as somebody that is a professional, has something, I'm going to go back and look for your email, but I recall very professionally organized, right? Very well stated, and why you would be a good guest on the show. It made sense. And furthermore, Janet, I'm going to admit, I dropped the ball even after that. And you said, well, I haven't had a date yet. You haven't given me a date yet, or I haven't heard any information. And she was persistent as well. So persistent pays.
Exactly.
Pays. Yeah,
exactly.
No doubt.
Right. I hate to point this out, but I am in the Janet Falk business, and you're in the Jim Gass business, and everyone is in the me business. And if we don't look out for ourselves and invest in ourselves, then who's going to do that? Not our employees, not our clients, not our competitors. So we have to be always promoting ourselves.
Dave, you're in the Dave Myers business.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Well, you're doing pretty good, actually. So, so Janet, Dave and I are really curious about, first off, you've already given at least 4 tips. I've written one of them down. We're going to put a lot of these in the comments today. And Janet, please, by all means, anything that you want to get out to our audience, put in the comments of any of the posts anywhere. Okay. Especially in the No Law Firm Left Behind group. That's actually pretty good. But so tell us about a little bit more about how lawyers should, craft their message, or who should craft their message for them to be, and you said quotable and memorable earlier.
Okay. All right. So I use a mnemonic device. I call it the 4 A's. So this is a way that you can remember what you're going to talk about and be more memorable and quotable. The first A is acronym. You take an acronym that everybody knows, like ASAP, and you give it a little twist. So it's a little unexpected. You say, as soon as profitable. So that will make you more memorable. Or you can come up with your own acronym, and then you have to explain it, which is even better. The next A is analogy. You can compare two things, and you can say, this is as clear as day, or this is as clear as mud. Then the third A is anecdote, where you give a short narrative that explains the situation or the solution or the problem, whatever it is that you're talking about.
Mhm.
So you have acronym, analogy, anecdote, and then the fourth A is alliteration. See what I did there?
Yeah.
They all start with A, and that's a way that you can remember. What I encourage my clients to do is before they have an interview with a reporter, to write down 3 points that they want to stress in the interview. And then they print it up in 16-point font so that they'll be sure to read it and have everything handy, because the reporter can't see what you have on your desk, right? This is a telephone interview or a Zoom interview. So you have your 3 points, and then for each point, you come up with one of the 4 A's so that you can drive home whatever it is that you're talking about with acronym, analogy, anecdote, or alliteration.
Mm-hmm. Can I put you on a spot, and can you give us some recent examples of maybe how you've helped law firms with the 4 A's? Do you have anything recent you could cite that wouldn't be giving up confidentiality also?
Okay, so I have another client that is not a law firm,
Okay.
but I'm going to talk about what they were working on.
That's actually safe, actually. That's a good idea.
Okay, so they were talking about their technology, which is for the institutional investor market. And they find that allocators, people who are at the big pension funds, who allocate money to different funds so that they can get, be outperforming the market in all these different funds, how they have to keep track of all of their funds and how they're all performing. And they receive reports on a regular basis. They receive reports on a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis. And if they're receiving reports, then they have to download them and store them in a special place in their system. It turns out that in the period from the middle of April to the end of May, they're getting a flood of documents. Monthly, quarterly, all kinds of updates. And it takes them several minutes to download each one. They could be getting, documents from hundreds of funds. So I coined the phrase to make this more memorable. I called this the spring deluge of data. Right? So
Gotcha.
now you get the idea that it happens at a certain time of the year, and it's this massive inflow of reports and data that people have to manage.
Gotcha.
Spring deluge. And that has a different element. It has more of a visual element. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I coined, and I think it's effective.
So Dave is an attorney, of course. We know that, right? Dave has a very good practice working for a fantastic firm, Buckingham Doolittle, up in Cleveland. Sorry, Dave. Also in Columbus, so that's fair, right?
Northeast Ohio.
And Dave has been charged with growing this area of the practice. Right. Okay. Dave is speaking in front of groups of people. Dave, have you made it on news yet? Have you been quoted?
It's oddly apropos, because right now I'm having discussions with certain news outlets to try and become that go-to resource for data privacy and cybersecurity issues. And I'm running up against exactly what you consult on, Janet. And so, I'm sitting here as a co-host of this episode, but my ears are also completely perked up, because I think that there's a lot that I could take from this, and I guess my question would be, I know that you typically work, as you said at the beginning, with solos and small practices, but the tips that you have would work for anyone at any size firm, right? I mean, because I might be at a firm with 70 plus attorneys, but I'm the person who's responsible for building this particular practice area.
Mhm.
So I mean,
Right.
how does that translate in, depending on the size, the scope, the responsibility of the person?
Okay, well, let me say that firms that have 100 attorneys or more tend to have a marketing professional who handles the marketing activities and also the public relations and media relations activities. So there's no sense in me going after that business
Right.
because they're handling it inside, and that person might be struggling underwater, but that's an issue for the firm and their resources. Fine. So the question that I'm dealing with here is how to identify what you want to talk about and make yourself different enough. And the second question is the reporters are already familiar to some extent with what's going on in the marketplace and in the technology industry and liability issues. But they want to know what's going to happen before it happens. They don't want to be reporting on what happened in the past. They want to be forward looking because that's going to be most helpful to their readers. So in addressing these issues, I use a tool I call a media profile, and we can include a link to that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah.
So a media profile answers 3 questions. So the first question is, why you? What makes you a reliable, authoritative, credible, accessible source? The second question is, why now? What is happening now that wasn't happening last week or last month because the reporter may not have heard of you before and they want to know why you're getting in touch with them at this moment. What is different now? Is there some change in the law or regulation or some new technology? Has there been some scare about hacking or viruses or something on that order? So your media profile identifies why you, why now, and now we come, Dave, to the money question is, why should anyone care, right? And this is the most important question of all. Why should anyone care? Because if they only knew what Dave knows or what Jim or Janet knows, they would save time, save money, and make more money. So obviously your service dealing with cybersecurity and data privacy is designed to help people save time and save money by keeping their data safe and secure and away from hackers and away from viruses and so on. So knowing that their data is secure, they can focus on running their business and make more money, right? Now,
but I mean, really, that 3-point media profile is completely domain independent. You just gave an example in reference to my practice area. That's what we're talking about. But it doesn't matter whether you're a data privacy, a family lawyer, a bankruptcy attorney. It really, it's the same approach regardless of the area.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're transactional or if you're litigation or if you're in some advisory capacity, like an ethics attorney or trust and estates attorney.
So there's a lot of flexibility built into that.
Yeah, exactly. The example that I've provided may be for litigation, but it works just as well for transaction. Think about this. If you see that there's a trend in, let's say, commercial office real estate, which is something that's very much in the news because of people returning or not to their office due to the pandemic, right? Then you want to look at the big picture of what's going on with commercial real estate. Maybe you have a crystal ball and you want to prognosticate about what's going to happen. Reporters who are focused on the metropolitan business district or reporters who are focused on real estate are going to be interested in what you have to say now that you have established why you and why now and why should people care, because people do care what happens when the downtown business district dies because there's no office workers down there. And, and how is that space going to be tapped into and maybe turned into, I don't know, dance studios or residences or movie theaters or, some other purpose. So identifying why you, why now, why people should care, because if they had an idea of what you know to save time, save money, make more money, that is what a reporter wants to hear. So as part of your media profile, you not only want to identify, what it is that you focus on in your practice, but you want to identify the trends that you see on the horizon that people are not paying attention to, and only a sophisticated attorney can talk to people in clear language about what the consequences are and how they should prepare if there's some legislation coming up or if there's some threat or something else happening in the marketplace. And these are all issues that can be discussed in your media profile. Your media profile is probably good for 3 or 4 months at a time because issues don't change all that quickly. So I hope that helps you to identify whether litigation or transaction, how you can use that format and develop your media profile. And by the way, anyone who looks at the media profile sample will see that the second page is a worksheet so that they can work on their own media profile and then get in touch with me. I offer a free complimentary 30-minute strategic consultation to look at your media profile or discuss your other activities.
Dave, do you want her number?
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be getting in touch. It sounds like you've just got a whole slew of different tips and tools.
Mm-hmm.
And, for somebody who, I guess I kind of have two questions. Is there somewhere we can kind of get the whole shebang? I mean, is there somewhere that's everything's been put together? And alternatively, out of all the different tools that you have and all the different suggestions that you have, I do a podcast and I always ask, well, what's that one thing? What's that most important thing?
Okay.
If you could say, like, what's that one thing that, forget everything else that I talked about, what would that be to the attorneys trying to get with reporters?
Right. Okay. So to answer the first part of your question, which is a lot of information is available for free on my website, janetlfalk.com, in the resources section. And what I've done in some instances is provided samples of a media profile, samples of a press release, or I've also provided a list of newsletters. I have a monthly newsletter. I've been writing it for more than 5 years. So I have a list of monthly newsletters that deal with that particular topic.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. There's a lot of information on my website. Some of it, I ask you to provide your email address. And certainly I encourage people to subscribe to my monthly newsletter. All my newsletters are on my website. So Dave, it's not your fault that you're meeting me in May and you might be interested in what I said in February. You will be able to read all my newsletters. Now, the second thing, which is what is the one thing that people miss to think about, it's the following. It's not about you. It's about who's on the other side of the table. If you say, I'm a great attorney, we're a terrific firm, we do this, that, and the other, no one cares. They listen to the world's greatest radio station, as do you and I, and that's WIIFM. It stands for What's in It for Me. So you have to always be thinking about what's in it for the person who you want to engage with, and how is it that you can help them solve their problem because you have solved that problem before, and you can make them look good to the next person that matters to them. So to go back to what we were talking about earlier about how I met Jim, I saw that his problem was he needed to have more podcast guests. And he needed to talk about a subject, media relations, that he hadn't talked about before, and that was vital to his audience. So I helped him solve that problem. So it's never about you yourself. It's always about you, the other person that you're engaging with. And that applies to every interaction.
Brilliant. I love it.
Dave, I didn't intend for the show to be a lesson for you, but what a great lesson, right? I mean, Janet, what better way than to kind of exercise what you're doing, what you do for people with somebody on the podcast. That's fantastic, right? I did want to say something about Dave. You said, why me, right? And when I think of Dave, and Dave, I've known Dave for 15 years, right? We're close friends and former business partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Dave, when we were business partners, he was into
Alexa,
technology.
sorry.
No, that's okay. He was in the thick of technology. I mean, he's doing technology consulting, right? I mean, implementing those securities that are so important and vital to the businesses in which he's going to help, right? As an attorney now. Is that a good why me? I did it. I lived it. I was an attorney, but I did this first at the same time as being an attorney. And now I'm exclusively an attorney. Is that a good why me?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Let me say that my logo, which you may have seen on my website, is the letter F, and it's embedded in an octagon because I'm not a round peg, I'm not a square peg, I'm an octagonal peg. I've worked in higher education, I've worked on Wall Street, I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with law firms, and I have a diverse client base. And so having that octagonal peg multi-perspective, makes me more, how can I say this, more capable in dealing with my clients from diverse backgrounds. So the fact that Dave combines both legal and technology, I think is a fantastic selling tool and certainly sets him apart from all the other attorneys who majored in political science or what have you.
I think you're going to be hearing from Dave soon, by the way. And if you don't,
very intrigued by all of this, Janet.
And if you don't, Janet, you're welcome to be persistent on him too.
I will follow that tip. Thank you.
There you go. Well, listen, I'm going to close this up. This has been great, Janet. First off, I'd like everyone to know how to get a hold of you. Janet, do you want to tell them?
Sure. I'm in New York. My phone number is 212-677-5770. My website is Janet at JanetL as law, FALK.com. I'm active on LinkedIn, and I also speak often on CLEs at different CLE providers. So you can get in touch with me through them. And I have a monthly newsletter. And one more thing, and Jim, perhaps you can share this link. I recently wrote an ebook. It's called Create and Monitor Your Marketing RBI. Your RBI, of course, runs bedded in, and it's a baseball theme about the 5 ways of getting business. And the 5 ways of getting business are networking, which we're doing here in a manner of speaking, writing, which I mentioned I have a monthly newsletter and this ebook, speaking, whether you're on podcasts or webinars or workshops, and then being active in the trade association of your target market. So I belong to a group called Women Owned Law. It is for women who are partners or who have their own firm or who have a solo practice, and women-owned businesses that serve the legal services market. So networking, speaking, writing, being active in the trade association of your target market. And then the 5th way is promote everything that you do online. So we've already published reference to this on LinkedIn. And of course, I have a lot of material on my website. And there are other platforms as well, if your audience is there. Right? Make sure that your audience is there.
Well, I'll tell you what, the ebook's an incredible piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that in the comments of many of the posts so to make sure that everyone gets that. Okay.
Okay.
And hops over to it. So, Janet, thanks for coming in and joining us this week. We really appreciate it. And yeah, so I just can't, incredible value with the tips that you gave today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me, Jim. And
So-
good to meet you too, Dave.
Oh no, it's our pleasure. You're the one helping us, not the other way around. So thank you so much. So real quick, if you're not a member of our group on No Law Firm on LinkedIn, it's called No Law Firm Left Behind. It's a private exclusive group on LinkedIn. So it's not a pretty URL. All you got to do is go LinkedIn and search No Law Firm Left Behind. Make sure you get the group, not the company, and join that group if you're in the legal community. Also, we've got our next issue of No Law Firm Left Behind magazine coming out. Yes, we have a magazine, and we're really excited. Anybody know that person on the cover? Is that anybody popular? No, nobody knows that person. So Robert Hirschbeck wrote an article for our magazine. That'll probably drop on June 1st, right around there. And it's a physical mailer, so it's not electronic. So if you're not getting it, by all means, send us a request, private message us somewhere, and we'll make sure that you get that. Okay. We are not having a show next week. We're taking the Memorial Day week off. However, we're coming back the next week with our good friend Eric Hunter from Dressman, Benzinger, and Lavelle. That is a Northern Kentucky law firm, fantastic firm. The really cool thing, he's the IT director at the law firm, but he's former an IT consultant like Dave was and I am, right? And so he's got a great perspective on IT and law firms and technology and education and technology. We're actually talking about something right now. So that's on June 1st. So everyone remember No Law Firm Left Behind Tuesdays, every Tuesday, except for next week, 10:30 Eastern. Dave, thanks a lot for co-hosting again today.
Glad to be here.
Janet, and we just cannot say enough. Thank you.
My pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank